Welcome to the Leading at the Next Level podcast with Dove Development and Consulting, the show built to provide ongoing support for your leadership journey. Now, before I jump into what we're about to do, I want to give you some context for this particular episode. And it's something kind of neat. In many cases, Cindy or I share a short lesson, maybe 15, 20 minutes of something we've put together that can give you actionable steps you can put in place in your organization right away here to capture and loss profitability, improving productivity, all through the guise of how do we lead our people better and communicate better. What we're going to do today, though, is interview one of the folks that's been a part of our executive leadership elite think tank for a couple of years now. And that's one of the pieces that we've added to this podcast is how do we talk to some of the best leaders in their respective industries. Now, before I do that, I want to say, if you'll stick with us through the end, I'm going to share something with you that can give you some unique access to a program like you've probably never seen anywhere else. So before we get through all that, let me introduce my friend Phillip Read. He's the chief of police in Bridgewater, Virginia. And Phillip and I have known one another for more than a decade now. I think probably 12 or 13 years. It's been a lot of fun. Phillip, do you want to say who you are? Give a little bit of your background, personal, professional, whatever that looks like for you.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Phillip Read. I'm the chief of the Bridgewater Police Department here in Bridgewater, Virginia. We have it's a smaller department. However, before I came to Bridgewater as the chief, I was with Harrisonburg PD in the city just north of us for the past 12 years, and I've been the chief here now for 3. Before that, I was in the military for 6 years. Few deployments, one to Afghanistan, one to Iraq, with the infantry, with the 29th Infantry Division. I have a wife and 4 children, and they keep me on my toes. And just having a blast down here in Bridgewater. And you said one of the best leaders. I just have never thought of myself as one of the best leaders. I've always strived to be that, but yeah.
Well, Phillip, one of the things that Cindy and I do all the time is we hammer the idea of leadership isn't about a title or a position. It's about the influence you have with people around you. And while you're currently the chief, I mean, the more than a decade that I've known you, I've seen that leadership the influence that really builds leadership. I've seen the influence that you've worked to get. Now, what I want to do is, with your experience, you've had some unique experiences and so on. You've kind of grown through the ranks in the different places you've been. Talk about why you were even willing to accept the responsibility that comes with leading a team formally in your role.
I've always thought of it as wanting to be something bigger, and I know people have heard this, but being part of something bigger than I am personally myself. So what can I do in whatever role or capacity that I have to just be a part of something bigger, to change the community, to change the world ultimately by influence. So as I've taken different roles up through the police department, different roles in the military, that I find joy in helping others, but also making positive change with others in these roles that I've had. So,
well, I'm going to get into some stuff asking you about your team, because I've watched, since you've taken the chief role in Bridgewater, I've watched so many of the things that you do that I feel like set you apart from any other law enforcement group that I've ever watched. And I've been around law enforcement all my life. One of my dad's best friends was the deputy sheriff in Rockingham County and worked his way up through. So, I mean, I've got a lot of heartstrings to law enforcement, but I've seen you do some cool stuff. Before I do that, I want to ask you, with your involvement in the Executive Leadership Elite Think Tank, a group of business owners and executives that Cindy and I facilitated, I think we started that group in 2019. You've been part of it at least 2, maybe 3 years. I can't really remember. What's been your biggest takeaway, or what's really given you the juice from the squeeze, if you will, from being part of that group that meets half a day each quarter and then a full day in the fourth quarter of each year?
I think it really makes me think outside the box, because in the police world or in the military world, we all talk among one another. However, with this group, it's just really made me think outside the box. What other leaders in other industries? Leadership is relatively similar across no matter what field you're in. And so what they're doing as in not just leading an officer per se, but they're leading a businessman or woman. They're maybe leading a landscaping crew or a construction crew or whoever that other leaders are in charge of. It's really made me think outside the box, like, wow, I could actually apply that with police, or I could apply that with so that is really and it's just a bunch of different things that I've been able to take away from that. So
Well, the reality, it's funny because when you're in that group, you're the only one wearing a badge and carrying a gun, right? So you've got
correct.
a
Yeah.
level of authority nobody else in that room has.
Yeah.
But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about leadership and how can we earn that influence with the teams that count on us. And in your case, it really carries over to not just the teams that report to you. You've got a great bunch of folks in Bridgewater on your team, but you also have a bunch of constituents, the folks that live in the town of Bridgewater, the businesses that make up the tax base. And with that kind of in mind, what would you really like the community to know about your team and what your goals are with really leading the team there in Bridgewater?
I would just want them to know that sometimes people feel like we aren't approachable, or they're wasting our time if they were to call us over something simple or something mundane or something like, but as in law enforcement and police, we're here to help whatever you may think was simple or unusual but not worth our time, to give us a call, to know, like, to build that relationship, build that bridge between whatever business or whatever community to the police. So in that way we can better serve. So but we, as the police department, we do all kinds of different things. So we're not just there to call 911 when you need us in emergency. So some of the things that we do are crime prevention through environmental design. So for instance, you're building a new business. Just last week, I went and assisted with a business owner, took a look at her property, where to place cameras, where to put the proper lighting, where to put bushes and not to put bushes, to make sure, just less chances, less opportunities for break-ins, what kind of locks to put on her business, all that kind of thing. So we do a multitude of different things to help our community to prevent the crime, not only just stop it. So.
Well, and on that note, I mean, I don't remember exactly when, but I know your team has done something really, really cool for business owners, that you've kind of done a safety check of all the businesses in the towns that you support. Talk about that a little bit while you're on the topic.
Yeah, just recently I kind of made it a goal 1 month to send every single officer to a certain section of our town and to literally check on all the businesses' doors and windows to make sure they're securely locked throughout the day and throughout the night, just to prevent any opportunity of a break-in or whatnot. And we caught several unlocked doors and windows, and we put a little flyer on the door saying, "Hey, we stopped by, we checked your business. It's a secure. If you have any questions, some phone numbers, so forth like that." So, and we got a lot of positive feedback from the community, from the businesses, like, "Oh, thanks for checking my parking lot and my business in the middle of the night, so I don't get burglarized and don't get theft. Don't get my vehicles broken into of my fleet when I'm gone," that kind of thing. So.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. I mean, one of the things that we've talked about in the one-on-one conversations that you and I have had has been really about how do you show the town council and even widely throughout the town, here's what your tax dollars are doing. How are you a good steward? Well, Cindy and I talk about driving productivity and profitability in the businesses we serve. That's not necessarily your world, but making sure that people understand, here's how my resources are being used well. That's a big deal, right? And that's exactly what you did. So very, very cool.
Yeah.
Talk to me about a recent project that you've maybe led on your own, or you've been a part of, that you've been able to help spearhead, that's had a significant impact on the community. You just talked about that's pretty cool with checking the businesses and so on, but I know you've done some other neat stuff that's had a pretty significant impact on Bridgewater, but other areas around our local area.
Yeah. So one of the things is that Police Assistance Pact. So we are a small town agency, as well as a lot of other small town agencies throughout the region, around Rockingham County, as well as outside of our county. So what we have recently done, we created a Police Assistance Pact. For instance, we need some extra help. We need some extra officers for a parade or for a lawn party or a special event. So we can reach out not only to our county partner, our Rockingham County, the sheriff's office, but we can request assistance from other towns that don't necessarily have jurisdiction in Bridgewater. This pact helps give them jurisdiction here. So we were able to reach out to towns such as Elkton and Grottoes and Timberville and so forth, and as well as all the way up to Newmarket and Shenandoah, town of Shenandoah. So yeah, it's been great. And as well as those other towns can request assistance from us. So if they have a need last minute, they can request. If we have some officers, we can send them their way, or ahead of time for special events and so forth. So it's worked out great. We utilized it during our last lawn party here just a few months ago, last month in July. And yeah, I think it's very positive for the community. And so.
Yeah, in some of the talking, and I won't take you down the path of the specifics, but you've shared with me some substantial things that it does to increase officer safety, to increase citizen safety, right? In many of the different scenarios with the planned events, you've got a great opportunity for share best practices, to learn from outside eyes, and see how can we all get better? How can we take ideas that somebody else is doing and build on them in our own community and really provide a more effective thing? And the part that I've also seen you do with that, it's a conscious awareness of how do we make sure that we're not overtaxing the county resources that only have so much as well.
Right. They can provide, a few deputies here and there sometimes. But, this is just extra help if need be. So, and, if community, the only really question was that I had from community members, like, well, I'm paying taxes for you. I don't want you working in another jurisdiction. Well, when that happens, we actually pay those officers to come here, and then they actually pay for our salary if we go there for a few hours. So that's all covered. And so that was just different things to work through when we started.
Yeah, and it's all about understanding, right? I mean, hey, the dollars that are being spent here are for here, and the dollars, if we're from somewhere else, those dollars come from that area.
Correct. Yeah.
Very cool. One of the things we've talked about a lot in the Executive Leadership Elite Think Tank are values and purpose and mission. So can you talk a little bit about the mission and vision of the Bridgewater PD and how it really ties with your own individual values and goals that you've got personally and for the communities you're part of?
Yeah. So we have a mission and vision statement, and we have an acronym. It's called PRIDE. So as you need to have pride in your work, pride in your job. So that stands for professionalism, respect, integrity, dedication, and excellence. And so we have that integrated all throughout our mission. And at the end of our statement, it says, in quotes, "What more can I do?" And so we're not just going to be there and take a report for a traffic crash and just be like, okay, here you go, and be on our way again. What more can I do? Well, this person's stranded on the side of the road. Hey, can I give you a ride to the closest gas station so then you can be picked up there? Or can I help you in, doing this or that on a certain call for service? Or can I help assist this victim that's just been assaulted, a domestic assault? What more can I do to help her or him and get them to the resources that they need, or anything and everything that, to lend that extra hand to take the second mile. So, and so that's part of our philosophy. And in a small town, we have the time and resources to do that, to take that extra step. So, just to provide that extra support.
Phil, one of the things I've seen over the course of my career is that you're going to pay somewhere. And if you pay on the front end, it's usually a little bit more right then. But if you pay on the back end, it's a whole lot more over time, right? So do you see that with what you've done in the town of Bridgewater, about how if you take those extra steps up front, it helps maybe buy you some extra grace or get
Oh,
you better results back.
correct. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Um, Taking those extra steps provides safety and security for those victims maybe later on down the road, or it provides just assistance to those who need it that in a time of need. And it's just, yeah, I mean, time and time again how it's paid off for everyone involved, as well as, just even the bad guys, giving them a little bit of respect, a little bit of extra here and there. They'll just willingly, if they know they've done wrong. We've had several times where, like, okay, yes, sir, I know you're honest and upfront with me. Let's go to jail. It's okay. Yeah. So, it's definitely paid off in the long run to go that extra step with everyone. Yeah.
Yeah. If you were speaking to it, and this was almost a situation that I put in your lap, whether you realize it or not, because about 2 or 3 years ago, my son was wanting to make a career move, and I had full intention of having him talk to you and 3 or 4 buddies that own different businesses and so on. He got to the first one, and that guy hired him on the spot, so he never made it to you. But if you were talking with somebody that's a young individual or professional, and they were really looking to advance in their career, and they wanted to become a successful leader and have a lasting impact and influence on the people around them, what advice would you give them?
I would give them, as in law enforcement, it is a great profession. It really is, and it teaches you so much. Just responsibility. It teaches you so much of what, like, dependability, and just like all the different aspects that we deal with on a daily basis. If leadership, I think, in a time of an emergency is so critical, and it teaches so much to young, even if you don't stay in law enforcement for 25 years, those who have law enforcement at their first few years of their lives, or military, it teaches you so much on leadership in emergency situations, to stay calm under stressful situations. And it really it's where the rubber meets the road, in other words. And I mean, I think it's a very rewarding career. It can be also very taxing. So, just to be honest, I mean, some days you're gonna be worn out, and but it is a great career and a great stepping stone. Yeah, yeah.
Just a few weeks ago, you heard me and Cindy share what's ultimately based on the first chapter of the book I'm going to release soon, Leading with Clear Purpose, where I reference you and another friend of mine that's chosen public safety as a career, and where, gosh, you certainly didn't do it for the money, not the military, not law
No.
enforcement, not fire safety. Not to say it can't be there as you grow through the ranks, but that's not the starting point. But the part that I would argue is every single role, if you're going to take on leadership responsibility, there's going to be days you get kicked in the shins,
Oh,
and
yeah.
some days it just sucks. It's the way it is. Now, in that, you mentioned something really neat. I heard John Maxwell say a number of years ago that he was talking with one of his mentors, and he asked his mentor a question about somebody, and the guy says, "Hey, I can't tell you what that guy's character's like because I've never seen him in adversity." And what you just shared says, "Hey, it teaches you to handle adversity." That's where
Oh,
tough
yeah.
people, right?
Yes, yes.
Um,
Absolutely.
talk about a situation that you faced that, because of your in your role, don't give specifics, but maybe a scenario that you faced, that your training and the different things through military, through law enforcement, that's really been a challenging leadership situation, but you've been able to navigate it and help folks have the best positive outcome that they could possibly have.
Um, just leading a department of officers, or leading the patrol unit when I was a patrol leader at the city, or a squad of officers, or a team of soldiers, or anything. Um, I I would say the best thing is hearing people out, no matter if it's somebody on the street, or an officer that comes into your office. So much, especially at least in our profession. We want to just cut the person off, shut them down, be like, nope, you need to do this, this, and that, and just move on. But really, you hear the person out. They know you're listening. They know like that that I'm going to hear every aspect, every complaint, or everything you got to say, and then go forward from there. So I think a lot of times people just want to be heard, no matter if it's somebody that you're leading or that you're arresting, ultimately. So they want to be heard, and then you can, if you truly listen and not just hear them, if you actually are listening, then you can make a good judgment call on the next steps going forward. So whatever that would be.
Brother, that's powerful. And I did everything in my power to not laugh out loud as you said that, not because it was funny what you were saying, but because I know we're wired the same way. And that listening is not something that comes easy. And in transparency, do you have to work at it? Does it take a lot of energy for you?
Oh, yes. It takes a lot of cognitive, like, okay, I've got to listen to the whatever's going on. Yeah. So
yeah. Well, that's called being mature and taking responsibility for leadership, right? That's not just something that comes easy. You got to do the hard crap. Right. So this one's going to be awkward, but I'm going to ask you to do it anyway. What do you feel like sets your team apart in Bridgewater currently from other competitors? I mean, we've talked about this. I see a lot of different agencies that are hiring, and there's no shortage of, there is a shortage of talent in many different trades, law enforcement being one. What are you hearing from the folks that say, I want to be part of your team?
That's interesting, because now that it's not necessarily one thing like, oh, we pay the most, so everybody wants to come here, because we don't. Or we have the best benefits, because we don't. We have good benefits and good pay, but, or, not one thing, but what I hear the officers say is like, oh, you need to come to Bridgewater. This is a great place to work. So what that means, I think they feel valued. They feel like what they do here actually matters, and it's actually making a difference. Like you said before, we don't get in this profession for the money or the benefits or this or that. We get in this profession because we want to help. We want to add value to the community, and we want to feel valued as well. So if they come to a police department or a sheriff's office and they don't feel valued, they're gonna come and go right and left. So I try to create that culture of value, that I appreciate them, a culture where that I reward those good behaviors and good quality actions with, maybe it might be an award, or it might be, hey, great job, in front of a bunch of his peers or her peers, and just really show that we care about you, we care about your family. Recently we had a department family picnic during the summer, so just little things like that. I mean, you don't think that they mean that much, but it does mean a lot to some officers, and that they know that we care about them.
Yeah, Phillip, I shared a little clip, a video. Cindy and I did a keynote session a while back on some recruitment retention stuff, and I made a comment in this short clip from that where it said it's not always about the pay. We got to be competitive in pay, but it's really that culture that you talked about, all those pieces. And I just got blasted by these internet trolls. And I mean, the trolls that you're kind of like, boy, if you were across the table, I'd do this or this or this. And of course, somebody can be strong on the internet because we can't get to them, right? But the factor is, you got to be competitive. If you're paying a quarter and everybody else is paying $5, well, that don't work. But if you're in the ballpark and you've provided those things, you make sure people know they're valued, you make sure that you've got a good environment and so on, you end up having some of the best people in your respective field saying, hey, I'd like to be part of your team.
Well, yeah. Yes, an officer's coming here, taking a 10% pay cut to come here, speaks volumes of like, well, what's going on at your last department that you want to get out of there so bad? And it comes down to the care and the value. Yeah.
Well, and not even, I mean, even if they were in a good situation, I mean, you're being humble, I think. I'm watching that they're coming to say, hey, I want to work with Phillip Read. And I know you're not going to say that, but I kind of get that perspective. I've never heard anybody saying, I've got to know a lot of your guys. I've never heard anybody say, yeah, he's a jerk, but I win anyway because I really like Bridgewater. That's just not what it is.
Yeah.
Well, with that said, I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit to some of our notes. What are you actively doing to make sure you're giving your team opportunities to grow, both in their skill sets, the way they lead, all the different pieces to make sure that they're better when they leave, if they leave you, than they were when they got there?
One of the things is training. With police, we're always training for what we may encounter in the future. So we need to be well equipped in our training so we are not caught off guard and out of our element when something crazy may happen. So I really value to send guys and gals, I say guys and gals to different police trainings, and really just try to soak up as much information as they can, and then hopefully come back and share that with the other officers. Everything from, evidence schools to DUI enforcement stuff to CPTED, which is crime prevention through environmental design, through, there's so many different police specialties that officers can go and kind of get knowledgeable in that, I really push that to make them the best officers that they can be. And then to incentivize that, we developed a career progression program where it shows the steps that an officer can take and the training and the experience and just all the different things that they can do to then get a bump in pay and become a senior police officer, a master police officer, and so forth. So gets a little bit of incentive to it as well to push their career, to push their knowledge and their expertise that much further, which ultimately it trickles down to the community. I mean, if they're knowledgeable on a certain topic, I mean, it's helping the community, obviously. So.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got a bunch of one-trick ponies, you got to have all of them on shift all the time. But if you've got folks that are versatile, they can handle just about anything, anytime, right? And it carries over.
Yeah.
And we've seen that too. I mean, I've watched you do some different stuff. You've had some of your folks come through different things that Cindy and I provide, predominantly focused on leadership and workplace communication and so on. But I've even watched if you're traveling or if you're out of town or whatever, you've had folks say, hey, you're going to cover my spot in this town council meeting, for instance, or whatever it is. And here's an opportunity if I'm hit by a bus, if I take another position, or by golly, if there's a position that comes open for you, I want the best for you. I've watched you do some of that intentionally with your team as well.
Yeah. And having that opportunity to, I know I won't be here forever, and somebody's going to step into these shoes, and somebody will step into those shoes, and it goes from there. Where getting them trained up for that next leadership position. So I try not to say if I got hit by a bus, because I actually have been hit by a truck. So we'll try to leave that in the past. But yeah, to get guys trained up for that next future position is critical, because if you're the only one that can do the job, when you're gone, nobody's doing it. And so where does that leave the community? In my profession, where does that leave the community? Are they hurting then? Are they less safe than they were, last week when you were here, that kind of thing? So.
Well, and it takes a lot of security and a lot of selflessness to be able to do that, because I see a lot of folks in, I'm going to say leadership roles. I won't call them necessarily leaders, but I see a lot of folks get kind of territorial. Well, I can't teach them this because they might be better than me. And I'm hearing and I'm watching. I'm not just hearing, I'm watching you do it from a perspective of how can I make this officer and this officer even more effective, to where if they're in my role, or if they take another role in another jurisdiction, they're going to be as good or even better than what I am in my own role. And that's pretty solid.
Yeah, and that's a inward thinking rather than an outward thinking. I mean, if we are pushing officers into future leadership positions across the county, across the state, I mean, how awesome would that be? I mean, that I'm thinking, well, oh yeah, they might not be helping Bridgewater anymore, but if they're a chief or a sheriff somewhere throughout our communities, I memean, that's better than keeping them here as their current role for the rest of their career. So, but that's just my thought process on it. So, And the famous phrase, what if we train them and they leave? Well, what if we don't and they stay? So, and I don't want that. So,
I'm not going to speak to law enforcement, but I can speak to several organizations that I've seen that have taken that to heart. Of, hey, let's not train them so they don't have any choice but to stay here. And oh dear God, right? So one of the things I'd like for you to talk about, kind of as the last question I'll ask you before I just leave it open ended for you, is talk about some of the things that you do in the community. You've mentioned a few, but what do you do to really engage the local community? What kind of ways are you looking to make the community better? What are you, because I've heard you openly use the term community policing, and it's a super positive thing.
yeah, community policing is like some of the things we do to try to influence that is just public events. We just recently, the beginning of August, we had National Night Out. That's a national event, but that gets us out in the community speaking to families, to kids, to parents, to any community member on a positive note when they interact with us. Because if they see only law enforcement in uniform under crazy emergency situation or getting pulled over or negative event after negative event after negative event, then that's all they think. And it's a it can be a trigger in people's minds of like, oh, police, and then have a bad experience. So we try to do some positive events, coffee with a cop, popcorn with the police, just anything to get us out. We actually have an event next week. Actually, that's this week. Um, of We're gonna have some lemonade and coffee out at our local Southern States gas station during the day and during a busy time, and just talking with citizens, talking with their customers, offering some free drinks, and just hear them out. And we actually get a lot of good information then as well, like problems somebody might be having in their neighborhood or so forth, but they don't want to bother us with a call, but they'll they see us and they'll stop and tell us about something going on. It's like, oh, okay, thanks for that, we can definitely take care of that, or whatnot. So just that positive interaction in the community, and doing all that we can just to have a good presence with our community members.
Yeah, I mean, I take it for granted too often because, like I say, I grew up around it. A lot of with my dad's best friend being law enforcement, and a lot of his friends being law enforcement. It just was natural for me. I had those relationships, but I take it for granted that not everybody has that comfort level. And I love seeing what you guys do to make sure people feel really comfortable about, hey, man, we're doing our jobs. We're here to help you.
Yeah.
With all this said, we've had a great conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time to do it. What's a final thought that you'd like to leave folks with so they know here's who Chief Read is, and here's the goal that he got, or whatever that may be? What final thoughts you'd like to share?
I think that just I've always, it's just amazing that I'm in the position I am in now, because I was just a young kid, country boy that just grew up in way out in the woods, and that was pretty much me. And I looked up to like hearing stories about my grandfather and just looking up to great leaders as I grew up, and just wanted to be just like them. And I'm just a kid with dreams like anybody else. So I think I've tried to make something of myself, but I've still got a long way to go.
And Phil, I absolutely love that. I mean, there's not a day that goes by that Cindy and I aren't thankful for the relationships that we've got today, because same deal, country boy, dumb as a stump, blah, blah, blah. I could go on for days about that, but I look around and think about, and you included in that group, I think about the relationships, the people that we get to consider friends today. And I'm thinking, dear God, this is pretty neat that we get to do some of the things we do. Now, here's the challenge that I think that puts on us. We got to pay it forward. How do we use that, the blessings that we've had, to make sure that other people can be better because we've had those blessings? So,
yeah, absolutely.
Really appreciate you taking the time to share with me here today. And for those of you listening, thanks for listening to the Leading at the Next Level podcast with Dove Development Consulting. Appreciate that we had this opportunity with Phillip to learn about what he's doing in Bridgewater and just kind of keep a finger on the pulse of where he's going from here. Now, this particular session was not approved for continuing education credits, but if you need continuing education credits specifically in the human resources community, send me an email at admin@dove-development.net, and I'll hook you up with a coupon code that you can get complimentary access to a 45-day all-access pass to our full Leading at the Next Level program. I think we've got north of 150 hours worth of lessons in there, each individual lesson approved for credit through SHRM and HRCI. Love to hook you up with that. And with all that being said, no further ado, we'll call it done. Phillip, stick around with me for just a minute after I close the recording, and we'll see you all the rest of you soon. God bless.